Welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality, and we're so glad you're here. This is a viewer and listener supported podcast, so we greatly appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, share, and subscribe to any of the social media content platforms that you're using. And then if you go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, you can make a one-time donation, or with a monthly subscription, you'll gain access to our bonus content. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you're here. And today we are excited to have Adam Roberts with us. Adam is the owner of Screenland Armour Theatre down in North Kansas City. He's a local Kansas City guy. And thanks so much, Adam, for joining us on Spirituality Adventures.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. I love to get a little bit of background story on people, just like where you grew up and, kind of how you landed in the career that you're in right now. But like you grew up in Kansas City, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. Pretty much most of my life. So I was born in Wichita, but we only lived there for, like 9 months after I was
born in Wichita.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What hospital? You don't even know?
I don't know. No. It's on my birth certificate. I don't know.
Yeah.
My relationship to Wichita is
very
estranged. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we moved to a suburb of Dallas, which again, like I have no connection with. I don't know, recall anything because I was like under 2 years old. Then we moved to Kansas City. But my parents were both, the roots are Kansas City. So it was just a homecoming, I guess, of sorts for them. And then I've been here since, like I said, I was 3 or 4. So my whole life.
What elementary school?
I went to Chin Elementary.
Chin.
So I'm a Northlander. I grew up all in the Northland. So Chin, and then Plaza Middle School, which is no longer there, and then Park Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When my dad ended up getting a job with TWA, like in '65, and so we lived in Prairie Village, and then I was at Prairie Elementary. But then when the airport moved north, this is how old I am, we moved north. And so then I went 1 year to Graydon. And then I went to Plaza, which I don't think we called it Plaza back then. And then Park Hill. Yeah. So you went to Chin.
Yeah.
I was at Graydon, only a couple of decades apart.
Yeah. I mean, our ghosts could pass each other.
That's right.
In the halls.
What did you do after high school?
Well, I did, I think what a lot of people do now, which is kind of skirt the earth and try to figure things out. For 2 years, I just kind of worked in a pizza place and did that thing, just kind of was a kid for a little bit. And then I tried to figure it out. So I've always wanted to make movies. That's been like my thing my whole life. Like when I was 13, I hand wrote my first script and I was like, this is it for me. I'm going to make movies. And I didn't really know how, but I was obsessed with learning how to make movies. And my parents had a little like VHS camcorder at the time. So, and it like half worked. My dad had like probably a lot of dads in the city had filmed for whatever reason, the flood of '93. Well, in that time it got a little wet, the camera did, and didn't work so well, but it like basically functioned. It turned on if it was plugged in, and it kind of would record sometimes, but it gave me like I kind of understand what this is because I see photos of filmmakers behind cameras, so I understand the concept. So it was like a real self-taught thing, and I just kind of learned to make movies on my own, like doing internships, like worked at the
Yes, this is fascinating for me. So at 13, what was it? Just because you love movies? Was anybody in your family a writer or a producer or anything like that?
No, not a single real connection. It was just like I fell in love with movies.
So you just grew up in a family that goes to movies like every family.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even really go to movies that much. Like we kind of did. Like my dad really liked movies. We had a big collection of movies. He was, like a real entertainment guy. So he had a huge record collection. He was big into buying VHSs. He had, for himself, but we'd all shared as a family, like a Super Nintendo and a Nintendo, which were like mostly his, but we got to also play with them. So he liked movies, and we would go to movies every so often. But like we didn't like growing up, like we were like kind of a house family. Like we would go like shopping and stuff, and like they were just like home buddies, kind of. Like we didn't really go on vacations. We would go to movies sometimes, but not very often. Like I don't think I ever went to cognitively remember going to a sporting event, except for hockey games when we had the Blades here, because my neighbor was a Blades player. So I got to go with them because I loved hockey when I was growing up. But so like we didn't do like a lot of this stuff. My older brothers did, but like my sister and I are the younger half of the siblings. We didn't really, we got the shaft, I guess, when it comes to doing like those types of things. But the video store is like where I kind of connected with. So, and that happened when I was like 9 or 10, because we would go rent videos.
Okay.
And you know, every weekend was that, and that kind of became my habit until I was like 17 or 18, and I worked at a video store. So it was like the video store is really where I became like, was kind of like my self-education and you know, really falling in love with films. And then internet was really early, so I'd just like print off like, you know, dissertations on like film and like theory and like interviews and stuff, and would be you know, have them in my binder in middle school, like you know, the making of like Kevin Smith's Clerks or something, like how did this person make this movie for $30,000 and you know, get a release and all this stuff. And it was like, so when I was like 13 and 14, I was just like obsessively learning and reading and like, I just want to do that. It seems wild. Like I could do that.
That's good though.
And then, so like throughout high school, I was learning and building those things. Afterwards, I was like, how do I translate everything I know about film into a career in Kansas City? And at the time, there was virtually no film production here. It's changed significantly since then. But
what year would
this would have been like 2005, 6. Okay. So digital technology was just becoming available. Like you weren't filming on your iPhone. You didn't have an iPhone. There wasn't one. There wasn't an iPhone. You were, you know, HD was just coming out. 1080p was just becoming available. So I did what any dumb kid would do and weighed the options of, do I want to spend, you know, $25,000 going to film school? And I looked into going to different film schools, but every time I looked, I was like, man, I've already kind of done this. I've already made short films. I've already been on film sets. Why am I paying $25,000? Do I just spend like $12,000 and buy some equipment? And so that's what I did when I was 20. I saved up a little bit of money and took out a loan, and I was like, I'm just going to give myself my own film school that is in my house, I have all the equipment available. And that's what I did. So those first couple of years was just like working really hard. You know, I had 2 jobs at that point, and then I bought ended up being like $15,000 in equipment. And it was just like learning to make movies with my friends. And then it was like, well, I spent a lot of money I don't have. Now I got to pay that debt down. And so that was like kind of like my early 20s was just like trying to figure out how to pay this debt down. Cause I was like, I'll just shoot weddings and commercials and that'll pay it down. And then I did a couple of each, and I was like, this is not what I want to do. This is not the creativity that, you know, I got into this for. It was kind of like soul sucking to do those types of projects. And so I was like, well, I'd rather work like 2 jobs, like serving tables and, you know, making pizzas, than doing that, than making these, because it just felt like it was against everything I believed in. And then that led to me getting corporate jobs, working at H&R Block and Sprint, and getting in tech somehow, early tech days when nobody questioned anything, and you know, getting into that. But it was just kind of this, you know, weird space of, I don't know what I want to do. I just want to work in movies. And that eventually led to, you know, somehow owning a movie theater at 26, which was, you know, nowhere in my wheelhouse. I'd never worked in a movie theater. Yeah.
I interviewed Patrick Poe last week, and so you're the second filmmaker that I've interviewed, and I'm assuming some of my audience is a lot like me, in that I didn't know the difference between, I mean, I know a feature film, but then what the difference between like a short was, and then like something that's even shorter than a short, which is what's the name for the stuff where you literally shoot it in one spot. It's I forgot the name of what he
was talking about doing like a sketch.
Yeah, sketches. The difference between a sketch and a film short, and then of course a feature and all that kind of stuff. So did you get your start in like the stuff you were really wanting to do? Was it film shorts? Was it sketches? Was it full feature?
It was always like features. Okay. It was always just making features. Like I didn't, there's a blip where I had to like do, you know, in front of the camera stuff. I didn't really like acting. That was never my thing, but I did like writing, and I did like directing and using the camera. But I never really liked photography that much. But I did like everything film related, and you know, but it was always features. It was always, because that's what I grew up watching. It was like movies.
So have you done features?
So I've never made my own feature. I've made a lot of shorts. I've worked on a lot of features. But so the one hesitation I have is like I get so into my head about like what is your first feature, and it's like mostly because when I was in 6th, 7th grade, reading those things, it's like that people accidentally stumble upon a really good first feature. And it's usually out of necessity. Like nobody's making a movie for $30,000 because they want to make a movie for $30,000. They're making a movie for $30,000 because that's all they have, and they have to make a movie for that much. Whereas in my head, I'm like, I'm just so in my own, like, it has to be like, you'll know it, and maybe it'll take me, 20 years to make that movie. And I think the older I get, the more I'm like, loosening up a little bit. And in the last like 18 months, like throughout the pandemic, I wrote more than I've written in like a decade. I wrote like 5 feature scripts, which is just absurd. And it was just kind of getting back to my roots and like freeing up my time and really focusing that I need to get back to making movies, because you get lost in the being self-employed, and running the businesses I've ran over the last decade. Like it scratches an itch in a way, because you're still working in that environment and you're still doing creative stuff, and it's still for yourself. But then it's like you look at the whole pie in front of you, and it's like, well, this has been fully untouched for 5 years, it seems.
So did you start Waste of Mind Films? And that's a company that you started to do the stuff that you wanted to do. Is that right?
My Filmworks, yeah.
And then did you start putting film shorts out there in film festivals? Different places?
So I actually started that company when I was 17, and I was like figuring out how to like run a company, and kind of like what is an LLC and all that stuff, not knowing that in like 10 years I'd really need to know a lot more than that. But yeah, I mean, like that was for everything. That was for like my wedding stuff. It was for everything. It was just the banner. And then I started making my first like real short film. I was 15, and I did it kind of secretively. Like I remember my mom coming home when I had a whole film crew of people at the house, and we had like 4 actors and like 12 people in crew and all these big lights and stuff. And she's like, what is happening in this house? But yeah, I mean, that was like my first real movie when I was 15 with like a full crew and stuff. And it's like kind of always been that sense, like, short films for me are more like exercises. It's practice for the big game. And so like there's some people who like are really good at making short films, and I don't know if they can make a feature that good, but they're really terrific at short films, and they do they treat them like features. They go on tour with them, they play all these festivals and they win awards. And then there's like a lot of people who don't really like short films. I'm kind of like somewhere in the middle, where I use them for experimentation and exercise, but I don't really like and I've done festivals and stuff with them, but that's not my goal. Like I know a lot of filmmakers out there who do 3 or 4 shorts a year, and that's all they're doing. And now you can make a living doing that on YouTube, and you can sell your short now. It's kind of a little bit different. You can make money doing it.
I want to get to Screenland here pretty quick, but I'm curious. It's a little bit off topic, but it's right down your wheelhouse. What are maybe the top 1, 2, or 3 independent films that have like been top grossing films, but that be really truly in that independent market? I know there's a blur, because you start getting the Lionsgate, and they started out as independent films, but now you're like, is this really an independent? How much money are they spending on films? Like what's the bar right now in terms of what's really considered an independent film in terms of budget? Like budget wise,
things are so weird right now. We're in Hollywood, and independent film included, is all in this like change because of not just because of streaming, but because of the pandemic, but mostly because of the technology, because we have 4K cameras that look great in our pockets. And because of that, we could truly make whatever we want, whenever we want, however we want. But it reduces that cost, right? So where we talk about Clerks was $30,000 and they shot on film, that same movie was going to be like $5,000 today or less, because it's just a couple friends hanging out making a movie. It's what your time is worth, and what is being wasted in front of the camera, whether it's like props or costuming or whatever the cost may be. So truly you can make a good looking movie for next to nothing now, and more common every year that's happening more and more.
Okay.
However, I think a lot of filmmakers still get stuck in their heads of, well, I need a 20-person crew and I need a huge budget. And that certainly that helps, and it makes it feel more, I guess, real in a sense. But it's the two are the same. So we're in this like weird time where you could truly make a movie for nothing. I think you've always some people have been able to do it, but I think everybody can realistically make a movie for nothing. I mean, iPhone has pushed commercials for the last 3 years to everybody can be a filmmaker, and this is how you can be a filmmaker. And I believe that is true. I think, especially with this latest iteration of iPhone, I think you can really, truly do that. But now, I mean, I think there's a handful of independent studios. I think you're seeing more filmmakers self-release their films. There's studios like IFC and Magnolia and Neon and A24. Those are like kind of the mid upper tier of the indie stuff. And then there's a lot of like kind of no-name labels, much smaller labels that just kind of get by, and they get by in VOD and stuff like that. But you're really trying to get like one of those top 5 to purchase your film. And if you get really lucky, you get somebody like Paramount that just goes all in at like Sundance. But the festivals are really what keeps filmmakers going now and really gets the spotlight on them. And that's where I think people really want to make good short films, because they can get into festivals and maybe, because that's how it was happening in the 2000s. Like a lot of filmmakers are coming out music videos and short films, but now everyone does those because you can even cheaper do those on your phone. But festivals is where everyone gets discovered, or you sell your movie now, or you find that you could go on tour and make a little bit of money yourself. But it's all a little bit of money now. It's like a successful run in a theater might be like $50,000. So it's all like relative. You better keep your budget $50,000 or $100,000, and you better be ready to grind for a long time, because all the awards in the world aren't going to help you if you don't have the marketing budget or the reach to really get out there.
Yeah. One of the first movies I saw in a drive-in as a young kid was Billy Jack. And I don't know if you've ever even heard of that movie.
I don't think I have.
No. Okay. It was really interesting. And somebody told me that was one of the top grossing independent films of all time, if you translate the dollars right now. But it had a guy named Tom Laughlin who was the star, and it should be actually you should go back and watch it. It seems cheesy now, but it's a guy who was a karate fighter who was trying to become a pacifist on kind of like a hippie Indian reservation, new agey kind of a thing. And the townspeople that were closest to this Indian reservation were racists. And so it had all kinds of interesting themes to it. And it's like one of my, I own the movie now. It was like it stuck with me.
Do you think that, as a kid. Do you think it's objectively a good movie, or is it nostalgically a good film?
Yeah. So I don't feel quite, I'm kind of just a movie goer and not super skilled at being like a film. I'm not a film critic, but I have been like I told Patrick even last week, I get my favorite directors and then I watch everything they do, and I'm into soundtracks and, but I'm not as skilled to know that, but it's nostalgic for sure for me. But I've been told that it does get watched in film schools for different reasons, and I can't tell you why,
I'll watch Billy Jack.
So,
all right.
At any rate. Yeah. My people my age, will know that film. And
a young Tom Laughlin. I got to see it just to see.
73 on Rotten Tomatoes.
I got to see the young Tom Laughlin. So.
73 on Rotten Tomatoes? That's high.
That's good.
That's actually pretty high for them, man.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. All right. Well, at any rate, I was just curious. So what's your favorite, like, super offbeat independent film?
So because I watch so much stuff. So there's like influential movies that even if I don't love them the same way I did, when I first started getting into movies, there's movies that are just like the success stories, and I think they're still good. Movies like the Blair Witch Project, for example, which is one of my actual favorite films. Just to see how they make it is just like fascinating, and what they're able to do to change the history and the trajectory of films with so very little.
I saw that in the theater and almost felt sick by the end of it, like that motion sickness thing.
But isn't it crazy now? Like everything you watch is
has elements of
has
that,
like
right?
you know shot on video type of vibe. Like every day, that's all we see is docu-style stuff now. You know, there's a movie, a lesser seen film called The Shape of Things. It was a play that became a movie. It's actually got Paul Rudd in it in his early 2000s days that I like quite a bit. It was
What's
indie
it called?
film, The Shape of Things. I think
Shape
it might be
of
kind of a
Things.
harder
Okay.
one to find. You can rent it, I'm sure, on Amazon.
Yeah.
But it was a small film at the time. It's one that always kind of stuck with me. It's just kind of this weird, funky thing. And I think more people should check it out. It's shocking. It's got some shocking stuff.
Shape of Things. All right.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, I don't even see the line anymore between like, you know, of course, a superhero movie, I can't deny its budget, and you can't get your mind away from how big and spectacular it is. But erasing those like handful tentpole films we see these days, like everything else kind of blurs the same for me. Like I think independent films are made just so well that they feel like the $30 or $40 million budget. So I don't really like modern stuff. Like I don't really discern a difference unless there's like something that just looks like it was made for $50, you know, and it's like a movie that I guess recently that came out. It was called The Endless, and these guys wrote, directed, produced, they shot it, they starred in it, and this movie looks like it's a tens of millions of dollars film, and it's about two brothers that survive this UFO death cult and go back to that cult as adults now, where they haven't been back since they were kids. And it's not really a horror film. It's more like a sci-fi drama, family drama. And it's tremendous. And what you see on screen, you're like, how did they make this movie for like 50 grand or whatever it was? It's like a huge in scope film. So you see films like that, and then you're like, okay, give these, and they're doing a Marvel thing now because of course they are, right? So I guess if you're looking for a more recent one, The Endless would be a good recommendation that I'm just like astounded by.
All right, I haven't seen that one. Yeah. Well, let's talk about Screenland because it's you've been in business now for a decade, basically, right?
Yeah.
And I think obviously it's a fixture. People know about it in the Northland for sure, but I think all over the city you've gotten great recognition. There's a lot of respect for what you've done the last decade at Screenland. Tell us how what was your idea behind it? What got you going in that direction?
I think what's
the history of even that location?
We can get into that real quick, and I can let you know how I got into it. So it's one of the original movie houses in all the city. So it's us and the Main Street Theater, the only two remaining originals. So we've actually been a movie theater longer than they have because they've been dormant a lot longer as well. So they opened roughly around 22, 23. We opened in 28. So just a couple years apart, and that would be the B&B Main Street in Power and Light. Back in the day, everything was 500 plus seats. There was no stadium seating. It was just like flats, and then you had balcony seating, and usually a riser above, and that's how we were built. And then of course, in the 20s we were showing silent films. They didn't last too long. We had talkies pretty quick after we opened.
So Screenland Armour opened when?
So Screenland Armour, specifically would be 2008, but Armour Theater is what it was originally called, was 1928.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been that theater, the building, the bones are the same. Our wall sconces is the only thing that remains in that, and the stage are the two original components from the original theater. But it's been a movie theater ever since.
And was it just one big theater?
Yeah.
But you've got it.
We have
four now, right?
So until 2012, it was always one theater.
Okay.
The seating changed, but up until 2008, it was that still sloped, flat seating like traditional movie theater seating. But it was the Armour Theater until the late 50s, early 60s, and it became the Center Theater, and then it was the Paradise Theater. The Paradise Theater integrated a video store component as well, because we're talking like early 80s, so there was no Blockbusters yet, and this was a very tiny video store in it, and that went until like 91 or 92. And then it became the Country Music Opry House, Northtown Opry House is what it was, for almost a decade. And that closed in about 2004. And then it was just boarded up for 3 years. And then 2008, the Butch Rigby, who started Screenland, he reopened it. And as a single screen, they kind of cosmetically cleaned up the whole building, put in a movie theater again, which didn't really change much. But he put stadium seating in, which was the big difference. And then 2012, so 4 years later, is when myself and Brent Miller, my brother-in-law and other co-owner, we took over. Neither of us worked in a video store. We talked about owning like a bar or restaurant, something cool. As you're 26, you're like, yeah, how cool would it be to own a bar or or something, because you're 26. And he was doing, he's been a union sheet metal guy, and that was his thing. And I had worked in these corporate jobs that I just hated. And the theater had never done good business. Like, quite frankly, it didn't have an identity. It didn't really know what it wanted to be. Running a single screen theater is a very difficult thing, especially in a city like Kansas City, where we're the birthplace of the chain theater. The multiplex and the chain theater come from Kansas City. We're not the first place.
Is that AMC?
Yeah, AMC started here, but then also B&B started here,
right?
And also
who
Dickinson.
was the owner? I think I knew one of the owners of B&B. I'm trying to remember.
Bob Bagby's the top.
That's
guy.
not who I know.
But the Bagby's is one of the B's in the B&B.
Curious, yeah.
And they've been around forever. But we're talking all these theater chains started here, grew out of here.
I even read a stat one time. As a pastor in Kansas City, I was always studying demographics and all this kind of thing. And Kansas City, I hate to say this because I love Kansas City. I'm a Kansas City kid, but it was you go to some cities in America and they're really fit and active, and they're known for their outdoor lifestyles and fitness and all that kind of stuff. Kansas City's not one of those cities.
Yeah, well, I think we're becoming that. It was mind blowing when I went to Chicago when I was 18, and I'm like, everybody's riding bikes everywhere, everybody's running. It's like there's parks everywhere.
Yeah,
I think we're starting to connect the city a little better. Yeah, I think
better.
Not having bike lanes really for my whole life until the last couple of years. Really, you don't realize how hard it is to get around until nothing's connected. There's no safe way to travel.
I used to ride 10,000 miles a year on my bike, so on roads, so I understand. But no, it was at the time when I looked it up, we were as far as people who went to movies, we were one of the top movie going per capita cities in America.
Yep. And we also have,
and then we also had our fair share of obesity.
Yeah. I don't know if I hope they don't correlate.
Right?
But we also had the most individual screens per capita, the highest in the country. So not only do we have the most, this crazy attendance per capita, we also have more individual screens. So that doesn't mean individual theaters, but you have these multiplexes that have 20 or 30 theaters in them. Mm-hmm. And we have the most of those. So it's just, you go to even, LA or New York, you don't have as many theaters as you do here. It is absurd. And we have so much space. So, not only did we birth this multiplex and these big chains, but we also birthed these giant, ridiculous box theaters, that are 40-foot screens and things of that nature. And really kind of changed the way people see movies. They think that you have to have, 4-foot or 40-foot screen, that your butt rumbles and is warm and someone's sprays you with water, and all smell-o-vision and all this stuff to really think that they're getting their dollar worth. But, the reality is the movie's the same. And if anything, those are going to make the movie worse, in my opinion. And, it's, if you're sitting in your house watching something, I come in and spray you in the face with some water. I don't know, just because there's water on the screen, does that sound like a good idea?
Yeah.
I don't know. But, there's these weird bells and whistles. The Kansas City is just constantly churning out. And unfortunately, most of the demographic here goes to those and pays that exorbitant fee for an experience that, I don't know. Is it better, or is it just what you think it should be? Yeah. So, we've been this weird theater for this whole time. Independents have been dying.
And you kind of opened it with a bar, is that right?
Yeah. So Screenland,
one of the first. Yeah, that was pretty cutting edge. Yeah, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was an old Butch thing. When he started Screenland, he started it in the Crossroads in 2004, 2003, and he was the first in Kansas City to get liquor in a movie theater. He had to change, work with the state to get that allowable.
Okay.
He also was the first to have couches and recliners.
Yeah.
So, and that wasn't anywhere.
Yeah.
So we were one of the first 5 theaters.
I went. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just, now it's commonplace. Everyone has recliners, everyone has alcohol. And that's just, it seems like a weird thing, but you had to change laws, it's just one of those weird things. And eventually I was just so burnt out from working for my corporate jobs and just over it, that it was if I could borrow a little bit of money, I could probably take over this theater. And, we didn't buy the building or anything, but we took over the business. And that's what we did. We put together a business plan, and I was able to fortunately beg, borrow, and plead to borrow a tiny bit of money from my grandfather. And it took a long time for him to say yes, because it was just, begging and begging, and really proved the business model that we were going to really, pay him back. And he let us borrow this little bit of money. And I quit my job the next day, and we took over this theater in August of 2012. And I worked every day for, 2 years, and Brent would work 2 jobs.
Just full blast.
We didn't have really any employees. We had like one projectionist, because we were projecting film at the time, and neither of us had worked in a movie theater, so we had to have somebody. But I would just work open to close every day, and like one person, and eventually we hired a high school kid. And then, it was just kind of grinding it out. But the idea was, we want to be the cool theater that didn't exist here, because when I grew up, it was just chains. There was the Fine Arts theaters. They had a couple theaters, and there was the Tivoli, and then, the one Screenland, but they were like 1 or 2 screen theaters, and they were kind of all spread out a little far away. And they mostly showed like foreign and art films. They didn't show new mainstream stuff. Yeah. So while it's good, it was good that there was those outlets. As a younger person, I was like, well, where do I go see? I don't want to go necessarily to see insert movie at AMC. I would rather go to, the Screenland or even the Tivoli or whatever it is, but they just didn't show them. So there's like this missing, component I saw in the city. And that was like, my business plan was like, we want to be this cool hip thing that shows movies big and small. We show everything. We don't just show art, and we don't just show mainstream. We show it all. And then we show classics as well. And we do special events. So it's just like, we're going to do everything that nobody's doing here. And I think it'll work. I think it's going to be a huge hit. And it took 10 years to become a hit. I think we've been like on this trajectory upward, but it was not easy. I mean, there's many days where we're like, do we just gamble the wrong thing? Is this like the end of the company, running a small business? It's truly a small business. And then, surviving the pandemic was a whole thing. But it was, constantly a learning process. Like 10 years in, it's still that learning process. And I feel like we're just now getting to the level where it feels like comfortable, really. Yeah. I was, so it's so many, so like I can remember, when I was a kid going to that space, that theater, and I saw Chitty Chitty Bang Bang there, and like Sound of Music I saw there for a nickel probably or something.
I can't remember. My parents paid, my parents took me, but yeah. And then you guys have done, and then I've been, kind of following. Now I haven't been to a movie since the pandemic hit, which I know people are starting to get back out again, and they have been now for, you guys reopened in 2020, right? Yeah. So you shut down in March of 2020, reopened in the fall of 2020.
We opened actually like 4th of July, basically, like right before 4th of July. Okay. So we were closed for like 2.5 months, 3 months, like that. And we were not only the first theater in Kansas City, we were like one of the first in the country. And that was
reopen.
Yeah. And that was just because our restrictions and our shutdown here, really wasn't that bad compared to, when I knew all these people around the country and other theaters. A lot of these theaters didn't open until like July of 2021. Yeah. They were really shut down. And there's for various reasons. Maybe they could have opened, but there wasn't any product out there. No new movies, no business. And, the cost of doing business is very high. You can't just, one person can't run a 4-screen theater. It's just impossible. And maybe you can, but you can't run it well. And, are your customers going to come back and all this stuff? But it was, there's a learning curve. It was being very nimble last year for sure. Yeah. To survive to this point. Yeah.
How did your income flow change? Was it from I'm assuming that you dodged a little bit here and there.
It was wild. So we were coming off of, we had 2 businesses at the time. We had an arcade restaurant called Tapcade in the Crossroads, and then we had and it also had a movie theater in it, and we had Screenland Armour. And then we had some other side projects. So we had done these pop-up bars, themed bars, and they had done very well in the fall of 2019. And then we, have our film fest, which was early, right before the pandemic.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit too.
So we had all these other incomes, and we had a great year. So fortunately, we had a little bit of extra money than we normally did in our bank account. And then, when things stopped, it was like full stop. I don't know, for at that point, 8 years, I've gone every day working nonstop, but all these different places. And it was truly when you unplug from everything, there's no dollars coming in, but the dollars are still spending. It was incredibly scary. And I was like, I don't know what we do here. We're all figuring this out together. And, as summer approached, it was, I don't think we can realistically keep both businesses open. It was just like we're just burning money, you know, we're just like cutting things down to the bare minimum. You're still just burning more than you're getting in. And there was just so little, you know, additional income or, you know, assistance at that time. There's virtually nothing. So it's like when we could open the doors, people, you know, I think at the time people were like, oh, the doors are open, so it must be doing fine. Even if they're not going, somebody must be going. And that just wasn't the case. So it was really like, come like July, I was like, well, we're gonna have to close one, and we knew we were gonna close downtown because downtown was just, nobody worked downtown and nobody really lives down there yet. So there's nobody around. So it wasn't just us. Like, I'm shocked how many downtown businesses survived, because it was, I mean, they had to really grind it out in different ways because it was impossible. There's nobody around. You know, there's still like very few people in offices. And we just really focused on keeping the theater running. We closed that business in August. And we really just focused, you know, we did like outdoor pop-up movies. We were doing like concessions to go, private rentals. You know, we were doing, you know, we started a Patreon. We did a 12-hour fundraiser, live fundraiser. We did all these different things just to like.
Is that the one the way back?
Yep.
Performed at?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we did all these things just to like, just to get close to making, you know, half of what we were doing, just to like minimum. And then, you know, me like doing the fight with, you know, local and state and federal government to try to find some assistance and that things of that nature. And then it was like, somehow it all kind of worked out. I don't know. It just like, in retrospect, it's like shocking that we've been, you know, almost 20 months into this pandemic, you know, at this point, you know, and it's like, you know, 2 years in, it feels like in a few months. That's wild. And how did we survive? How did we even do it? I don't even know. But it kind of went by in a blink. I think because we were all like working so hard, and every day kind of felt like the same long day. Yeah, it feels like we all had the longest day.
What percentage of your revenue stream has come back? Like, say, if you look at what it was like right before the pandemic.
So in 2020,
you're at now,
we lost 75% of our revenue.
Okay.
So 2019 was our biggest year to date. In our that would have been our eighth year, biggest in our history.
Yeah.
2020 we lost 75%.
Yeah.
And then this year I think we're going to be back to 2019 levels, and that's
really?
With our first 5 months. The first 5 months were really tough. First 4 months were really tough this year, and then really since May it's been just a skyrocket. Since July we've had historic months at the theater every month. So July, August,
awesome.
September, and October were historics.
Awesome.
You know, we'll see how the year ends, because holidays are always kind of weird. They're either they're really busy and then really not busy. But we're in a business that's only predicated on what's coming out into the theaters, right? It's not just your confidence. It's, is there anything you even want to see?
That's been interesting to me, because like I used to be so geared to what was coming out.
Yeah.
And I've lost that sense of feel. And then in the pandemic, you know, I'm watching Queen's Gambit, or I'm watching, you know, whatever that's coming out on streaming stuff, and more tuned into that world.
Here's a question.
Than I am to the.
Do you, the biggest difference for me watching movies at home or TV and movies in the theater is I mentally and more vividly recall them when I watch them in a theater.
100%.
And like,
same way when I, you know, it's not a good comparison, but like if I read a physical book versus a digital book, I remember the physical book better too.
I don't know what it
something
is.
I don't either.
Because you could say they're both like tangible items, but there is something about, I don't know, like turning the pages.
Yeah, and the depth and where it's at on the page.
Well, and I think you like hold, I don't know if you do this.
I lose all of that.
But like you're holding the book, and like no matter how many times you look at that cover in the back when you're reading a book, I feel like I look at it like 30 times. I'm just like looking at whatever, it doesn't matter what the art is. It could be or just a green book. I just like look at it, feel the letters, or like look at the letters. Yeah. And really like it kind of becomes a piece of you more tangibly, I think, because of that connection with the physical item.
But movie on the big screen, it captures your attention more. I'm not letting distractions come in. Definitely a better experience.
But I think you're not in the minority. I think there's a lot of people that are trying to get back into habits, and it's still kind of weird. Like it still doesn't feel like real life yet, even though it's like the lights are back on, but you're like, what? And I'm like that with some stuff, like still like hanging out kind of feels weird a little bit, you know, like the first few months were really weird. Like going out to dinner with friends I had gone to public dinner with, I was like, why does it feel weird? Do we hate each other now? And it was just like, I think we were all broken for a little bit. I think and now we're all trying to get our, you know, like I'm a big football, like pro football guy, and getting back into football games took me a couple games. Like I didn't feel real. It didn't feel like I should be there. It felt like surreal. And now like it took me like 3 or 4 games of going to feel like, oh no, this is okay. I like this again.
Like Arrowhead you're talking.
Yeah. Like just going to a stadium and being at like, you know, I went to a couple of baseball games and it was like, it doesn't feel real. It just took a while for it to come back to me, to feel okay, to feel, oh no, I still like this.
Right. Well, I want to save a little bit of time to talk about Panic Fest, your film festival. But before, so this is, I was thinking about how to frame this question up. But so what's interesting is, so I'm a Bible teacher. I was a pastor of a church, and way back when we were still doing videos in the 90s, I started doing short movie video clips as illustrations for my messages. So like I'd teach like this ancient text, the Bible, but I was always wanting to like bring it into the modern world and make application for everyday life. And storytelling and illustrating was the way I did that. And I'd either use a real story or I would watch movies, and then my brain would integrate it with the Bible. And so like, I mean, most all of my sermons had video clips, or like Matt and I would, you know, get a story of somebody that tied in and shoot that and use that as a, you know, kind of a thing. So I've shown hundreds of video clips. Like, you know, I would find it, edit it, you know, we'd shoot it, you know, it's a public setting. We weren't paying for anybody, and, you know, usually 2 to 3 minute clip. And so I've done this for decades, right? And so you're watching 200 to 300 movies a year.
Yeah.
When I talk about spirituality on our podcast, I talk about, you know, connection or belonging to yourself, connection or belonging to other people, and then connection to something greater than us that's loving and caring, hopefully, right? And so like, what's your spiritual journey? And like, what are some of the most, like, if you just using spirituality in the broadest term, what are some of the most spiritual movies that have like touched you in a way that you're like, wow, just like that touches you in a way that's maybe different or deeper than, it makes you feel like something else is out there or something, you know?
So I think more recently, the movies that have touched me have been more about like time and like the limited time we get, at least in this current state we're in, right? And so whatever that means, it's just like the how finite our bodies in life are. And even if they're not good movies, it's just those ideas that have really resonated to me. And I feel like I've been pulling that string out of like every movie or show. Like I'm like, man, is everything about like time lately or death? You know, is that like not in like a dark, depressing way, but like in like a just finite way, and like you know, you gotta live your life type of way. So I don't know. Like in terms of like ones that have touched me like spiritually, I don't know if there's any. I'll put it that I do watch a lot of like just big genre stuff and big sci-fi stuff that I don't know if always plays with those types of ideas. I do watch a lot of like horror films, and they do like often talk about, you know, these types of you know, spirituality and what that really means. And but I don't know if I always take away those things. Like I do take away a lot of like there's a film called The Relic that came out about this time or so last year that was really about like life and time and hereditary and that type of like life cycle, and it just like blew me away and like just made me like into a ball of tears. You know? It's just like a really touching film about family and life and time, but not necessarily about like spirituality, at least to me, but it just really touched me. But I think I like ghost stories, I think, in a way, because it makes me so I'm not overtly a very religious person. I'm not an atheist. I'm just like, I don't know. Right. I'm kind of like I guess you would say agnostic, but even that's like too much of a label. I'm more of like a hopeful person. I don't know. Like, and then so like, I do really like, I think I like these more fantastical stories and these supernatural elements and stories. Like when we talk about like aliens or something like that, I think it all ties into like, I want all that stuff to be real because it makes the universe bigger, right? Like I want everything in the Bible to be real. I want that to be real. But then there's the part of me that's like, but is it?
Yeah.
But it's not like an angry, I think when I was a kid, I was more like, but is it, I think that now as an adult, I'm like, but is it, and I'm like, but I'm so hopeful, I think I so desperately want like all those things, ghosts and the afterlife to be a real thing. And I think I'm like constantly chasing that, and maybe in movies in a way, like I'm constantly chasing that feeling of peace, maybe that like there is something else out there, or there is this afterlife, like I think when I saw Poltergeist, I was really young, and it was like my first impression of like a ghost, probably too young to watch it, but I had older brothers and my dad loved movies, and it was also a PG movie, so it was like, this is fine for kids. This guy's face melts off, it's okay. But it was like this a lot of the movie isn't scary, it is like a gentle like presence of a ghost, or it is like this idea of like the afterlife could be kind of pleasant in a way, or you can connect with each other. And I think like that's always resonated with me, is this like idea of like the afterlife being able to still like fluidly connect with our world. So I think when I look at movies, there is like this like connection, and my favorite movies are ghost stories, like interesting. And so it definitely ties, I think, into that hopefulness and like longing that there is something more that we continue on in some way.
During the pandemic, I'd never watched Penny Dreadful. And I ended up watching that series. I've always liked, the horror genre, and I do think it touches on spiritual themes. I mean, like I'm a big vampire fan, and I think they're always touching on themes about immortality and sucking the life out of people, codependency, like put on steroids and blood, just all kinds. The way my mind wraps around these themes I'm always, thinking about them from spiritual angles, but it's a lot of fun. But Penny Dreadful was, have you ever seen that?
I haven't. Yeah, that's one that everyone's like, you need to watch this show. You're going to love it.
It was so well done. And the ending of it was quite amazing. This whole thing, it's mashing up all these classic, monster stories,
Did you watch
Dorian Gray to Frankenstein to, vampire stuff to, werewolf stuff, and it just mashes it all up, and it still holds true. The guy that plays the Frankenstein's creation should have won an Oscar for his role in that. And it touches on the real Frankenstein story, because the real Frankenstein creation was into poetry and philosophy. The monster was, and this guy reads poetry in Penny Dreadful that it just like it knocks your socks off, And
is every season like a different monster focus, or is
it kind of mashes most of them up, but it'll feature some more than the others sometimes, but it still kind of starts out like they're mashing a lot of them up together. But any rate, just interesting.
Did you watch the show it's called The Leftovers?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so this is when you asked me like for a movie that like really connected with me like spiritually. This is not a movie, it's a show, but I think this one is it's probably the most impactful thing I've watched in like the last 5 or so years, and it's a short three season show, but it's basically like, did the rapture happen in this show? Like half the population disappears one day. They just disappear, nobody knows why, and it balances this like,
I think I have.
So it's based on a book, so the book was very popular, and the first season is just the book. The first season's very depressing kind of to watch, because it's a lot of people reacting after their loved ones just vanished one day, right? And they're left with all these questions as to why. And then it kind of becomes a little bit more. So one of the creators is who did Lost. So if you watch Lost, it kind of has a little bit more of that science versus faith type of play. But it leans a little more on the religious aspects of things, and it is just a perfect show. I think it's a perfect show, and it's high highs and low lows, and it kind of puts you through all the feels, but it definitely like makes you question a whole lot about what is life.
Yeah, and there's some shows that are like the science faith thing. Like, did you ever see Contact?
Oh yeah,
that was such a beautifully done movie. I thought with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey, and it was actually a novel that was written by Carl Sagan. I think wrote that novel.
That sounds right.
Yeah, who was an astronomer, kind of atheist astronomer, but he always he put faith and science like on the same spot at the end of that. It was so well done, I thought, those two themes mixing together. Anyway, let's talk about Panic Fest. Yeah, this is you've been doing this for almost a decade.
Yeah,
right?
22 will be our 10th anniversary.
And this is a movie festival, or like film festival that you do right here in Kansas City. Happens in April, May?
This year will be, pandemic moved us into April last year. First year was April.
Okay. We
went to January for 7 years, and then we were back in April for the last couple. So end of April will be this year.
Okay. So tell us about this. Just give us an education on Panic Fest.
Yeah, it kind of, honestly, it was similar to the theater. It was like, part of it was like, you have a theater that's not like anything else. You show things that no one else does in Kansas City. We have a film fest in Kansas City. It's called CAN.
Right.
It's like the international, it's like, I guess technically Kansas Film Festival, but it's been around forever. And then we have the Kansas City Film Fest. But those festivals have been like, always felt a little prestige and a little like old timey. Is the best way to put it. Like I'd gone to him and I'm like, this isn't what I want. This isn't the festivals I connect with. These aren't like the people or the films that they're showing. Festivals are, all down to the programmer. And unlike most festivals aren't owned by the theaters or run by the theaters themselves. They're like entities that are standalone. Ours is different in that, I co-own it with the other half, Tim Canton. He owns a website called Downright Creepy. And we just kind of talked about like, let's make some like Fantastic Fest, which is in Austin. Let's make that in Kansas City. Let's make this weird genre bending film fest in Kansas City and fill that hole. And do all the stuff we like to do and really make it a community. And that was like our thing, is make it really accessible and a community with all these types of films that nobody else shows. And that's what it started. And then like over the years, as I've gotten better at programming movies for the everyday of our theater. And programming just means like I do curate exactly what we show. Like even if it's like choosing to show the next Marvel movie or not, I'm the one who's deciding that. And like fitting in the smaller films and these classics, I'm the one who's deciding all that. And the more I go, the more you figure out your audience and you get a little bit better every time, or whatever the case is. So that's just kind of the fest, and like people connected with it, and we kind of kept fine tuning and changing what we didn't like and what we got feedback on, and then really leaned into being a community first theater. And and community for us means the filmmakers a lot of festivals put the filmmakers at the top. A lot of festivals don't really care about the filmmakers. They just want to sell tickets. We want that to be equals. We want, like, if you're a filmmaker, you're sitting next to an audience member and you guys are equals. Nobody's above anybody, and you're all here to watch movies and share your love of the genre. And that's kind of what we've grown upon. We're not showering people with awards. That's another like kind of comical almost thing festivals do, which is just like, you get award and you get award. Everybody gets an award, because you paid $50. Everyone's going to win best stunt featuring a kid under 10, like a very specific award. And we laugh and make fun of it. But that's like a lot of festivals. And because they get a lot of submissions, because having those little awards, so when you're shopping your film or your short, is what people like. But ours is just about community and really good programming, good films, good community, good special events. And since, we continue to grow, we had our biggest year actually in the pandemic, because we brought in an online component. So we were at 50% capacity for the festival this year, but we did 2 weekends, so we could get, usually we just do 7 days. This year we did 12, and then we did online, so you could watch from your house and attend. We had a whole plethora of virtual stuff and like pre-recorded things and Q&As you could do, and basically brought the festival at home. But we soared this year with that.
That's awesome.
And then we're going into our 10th anniversary.
And is there a particular genre of film that you're featuring in Panic Fest?
So
is it all horror films?
It's not all horror. We just say it's just genres of films. So it's like science fiction, it's, action. We've done some comedies, but usually the comedies have like another helping of something, like a science fiction comedy or something, and then horror. So and anything between, like, a thriller would fit in, or whatever the case may be. Like, we've never done like straight dramas. We've done pretty close, like a drama that has a ghost in it, that would be more drama than horror film. But we pretty much go horror, sci-fi, and thriller is what we like to say, because I think the audience knows what that is. You know what you're going to get yourself into. But we've certainly shown, like I said, like straight up action movies sometimes.
Yeah. So, and is that's several days, right?
Yeah. So
it lasts, like the general audience, how they can just jump in and
we make it really accessible. So
movies all day,
you can buy a full festival pass, which gets you everything in theater. This year we have a hybrid pass, so you get the best of both worlds, which is you can watch as much you want in person, and then you can go home and watch stuff you miss, because it's truly impossible at any festival to watch everything, because we have 4 screens. They're all playing movies at the same time, and a lot of them will only play once or twice. So you're probably going to miss a lot of stuff, and that's kind of the nature and fortunate and unfortunate of a festival. We program 50 different events, and there's 7 days and only so many hours per day. So that's like the best thing we've brought into it that we're keeping. And then there's just a la carte. So if you just want to come watch this movie, you can. You just walk up and watch it. And that's like the most affordable way to just start in, because it's $12 or something to go. It's just a normal price movie. But you get to be a part of it. And a lot of it is just like between films, those 40 minutes where everyone's in the lobby together, hanging out, you're rubbing shoulders with each other. And there's film critics, there's, studio people there now, and there's filmmakers and film lovers. And we're all kind of in the same room hanging out and, talking about what crazy thing we just saw on screen.
Yeah, that's fun. What have you learned about community, about leadership that stands out to you as you've done this for a decade now? You've built a lot of community around what you're doing, which for me is a spiritual thing. Just when we're connected to each other around things we love, we build friendships that way. Lives are touched that way. I'm sure you've probably had lots of fascinating things happen, just people caring for each other and stuff like that through the community that I'm sure there's tons of side stories that you never imagined that have come out of this community that you've built.
I guess I never thought we'd have like customers that became friends and like lifelong friends. And then there's like customers who, remain customers, but are so loyal and dedicated and truly like love the business and what we do that I never really like truly really love and defend us and support us in every way possible. I guess like going into it, I never thought like, oh, some of your best friends will come out of this owning this thing and doing this thing, and a lot of your new relationships will come out of this thing, or new partnerships, and then you'll change people's lives. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, and sometimes it's just so small as like, I'm showing you a movie that you made and you've never seen it on the big screen. I'm giving you a chance to see it on the big screen. And that's like what that means to you as a filmmaker, or as an audience member, maybe seeing a classic film you never thought you'd see in a million years on the big screen, or, meeting a celebrity or somebody we bring in, or just like what we do for the community, like just in general. And I guess like the sense of community is really what's, I think, changed my life most in the last decade. I mean, it led to me being a city councilman. Like never in my mind would I have ever done that, but it's just like caring for the community and now the residents of North Kansas City, but just really being a part of what we're doing and really trying to curate and help usher in like the best possible future and really change lives, I guess. Like, and I think learning that like the smallest things really do make the biggest impacts in people's lives. And you don't really recognize it until like somebody tells you like, hey man, I was in a really dark place last year and I found your movie theater and I started going every day and the staff is so friendly, and like, and then you see who that person is and you're like, oh, well, they're so quiet when they're here, but like just those little interactions are like, you guys saved my life. Like I was in a really dark place for those 6 months and that became like the only good thing. And it's like, it's almost like feels fake when somebody says that. It almost feels fake to tell that story, but then like having had that story told to me now many times, I'm like just shocked. But it is what makes you want to keep fighting and survive the pandemic.
Like movie Pastor Adam, touching lives.
But it is what makes you want to keep going. It's like it's not just like keeping people employed. That was a big level of it. It's also, I didn't want to work for somebody else. I'd gone so far, like you go for 8 or 9 years. It's like, I can't give up now because this thing out of everyone's control. You got to fight harder than you've ever fought. And then also keeping everyone employed. And then also like all these people who rely on us to really fill these gaps in, like it's an incredibly important thing. And that really was like, all those things made it quite easy to get up every day and fight every day and not get exhausted and really see the success stories and really just keep going.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Well, tell us, help people know how to connect with all that you're doing, both the online stuff and then of course the physical location, and maybe give us a couple of things coming up in the future.
Yeah. So Screenland.com is where everything's housed. So you can find, like, we do online rentals, we do our Patreon. So we still do like a weekly podcast. We do a watch party once a month. So we do, it's shrunk a little bit. And we were really churning stuff in the pandemic because we weren't.
What's your
really
weekly podcast called?
It's just our Patreon podcast. It's just the Screenland podcast. And it's usually either myself, I'll do a solo one, or it's our GM Jacob will talk about, just everything. It's like the movie business and like what's been going on, like what's changing in the business. So it's kind of like an insider baseball type of thing. But we do that. I do another podcast that's all horror based. If you are interested, we talk all horror. It's called the Nightmare Hour podcast. And then, we're always doing stuff. We're going into holiday time. So this is like kind of our crazy 6 weeks where we're just super, super busy at the theater. We just wrapped up our outside stuff. And I don't know what's coming up. I feel like I live my life like week to week on events. So everything's coming up, right? Everything always feels like it's coming up for me. So I guess really it's just best to just go to Screenland.com and see what's, immediately coming up. Cause I'm not sure when you're listening to this, it's probably, I could spout stuff, but it'll be dated so quickly. But we're always doing, every week is a special event. We're always showing something new. And then Panic Fest, as you said, is April of 2022. Tickets and details will start coming out early next year.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us at Spirituality Adventures, and thanks for what you're doing for the city. I think this is a great service to the city, helping connect people as well to some great movies and creating community and doing all the service that you've done. Thanks for doing that.
Thanks for having me.
So appreciate it. Thanks everybody for tuning into Spirituality Adventures, and we'll see you next time. This concludes today's episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, or subscribe to the social media platform that you're using. And then go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, and make a one-time donation, or you can subscribe monthly and receive our special bonus content. Thanks so much.